in the meeting. This meeting actually started back in February of this year. And based on the questions that were asked by members of parliament regarding the landfill and the dump, etc., we received a complete set of documentation, at least a comprehensive set of documentation regarding the whole landfill matter from the Minister of Vromi. This documentation actually entailed more than 500 pages of information, amongst which reports, and noteworthy to mention is the fact that we had several reports in this documentation that regarded the matter of waste to energy. Waste to energy, what does it mean? Of course, when we talk waste to energy, you're talking about GB being a stakeholder in the process. Because what would a company that generates energy from waste do? Try to sell the energy to GEBE. That is why throughout the whole discussion about the waste management and the dump situation, you heard many references to GEBE. So again, amongst this documentation, we had reports from, to mention, PwC, we had another report from TNO, and several other reports that looked at the matter of waste energy in particular. Quite some of the information regarded the current management of the landfill. That is one aspect. As you know, government entered into a contract with a company to manage the landfill. From another report that was prepared by SOAB regarding the landfill management, it is evident that for the amount of money that government is paying, that government agreed to pay for the management of the landfill, all of the services which are required to manage the landfill cannot be given. Looking at the landfill management, the minister, in responding to questions, indicated that he is in negotiations with the current operator at the landfill, and in first instance, apparently the government was considering to terminate the contract. However, in an update, Parliament was made to understand that that is easier said than done, and so the government now is currently looking at ways to improve the service given as managing the landfill. That's one aspect, and again, a lot of documentation has been submitted to Parliament with respect to that. The report that I just referred to, it is now in Parliament's possession. The contract that government entered into, the terms of reference before government entered into the contract for the management of the landfill. Then you have the issue of the dump. In the meantime, we speak of dumps. And as I mentioned earlier, an important aspect is, of course, what system will be employed to deal with our garbage, to get rid of our garbage. And that's one item. And then, of course, you have the dump, which is there right now. And what will we do with the dump? What can we do with the existing dump? With respect to the matter of waste to energy / what system to be used, on Tuesday, more questions were posed after we received a second set of answers from the minister. That is, Parliament received a second set of answers. But what I will be now focusing on, and I mentioned this in a meeting as well, is for government to give a clearer overview with respect to the proposals that government has entertained and or entered into in the recent past with companies regarding our landfill. Two companies were constantly referred to during the meeting, and that is why I believe it's important for government to make it very clear whether when referring to these proposals, whether we are comparing apples with apples or apples with pears. The two companies that have been referred to by members of parliament and also appear in the documentation from government are the first one in this respect. It's not the first company ever, but it's the first one in this respect is Synergy. And then you had, following Synergy, you had the issue of EnviroGreen. With respect to Synergy, from the documentation that we received, we learned that those negotiations were stopped by government, and Synergy was informed that they were no longer in negotiations. The government was no longer in negotiations regarding our landfill. With respect to EnviroGreen, however, we also took note of an MOU that was signed by the former Minister of Romy. We took note of a proposal for a concession agreement, and we took note of a proposal for a power purchase agreement that would have had to be signed by GEBE and correspondence with and by GEB as to the feasibility of this proposal for GEBE. So while there are more outstanding questions now for the government to answer, I will continue to insist that the Minister of Romy provides to Parliament and the people of St. Martin a clear overview of the two companies that I mentioned, what their proposals were and are, and whether, as I said before, we are comparing similar things or we are comparing different things. Otherwise, what we will quickly get is that this matter about whether it's 36 US cents and or 36 Gilder cents for or per kilowatt hour to be sold to GB versus a 26 cents, again, dollars or guilders, whatever the case may be, whether these are comparable proposals that are there on the table. And so that the people of St. Martin can understand when we talk about these numbers, what exactly do they mean? What is included or not in this amount? I think the government needs to come out and present firstly to Parliament a very, very clear overview and description of these proposals, because I can imagine coming out of the meeting of Parliament on Tuesday, these are questions that will be lingering out there.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NVGEBE. Tell them, connecting you
we're planning on swearing in the new government shortly, and I think it's a good opportunity to thank my colleague, Minister Ferrier, for his time and his service to the country. We've been friends for many years, but I really have enjoyed working with you. It's nice to have somebody who thinks the same, who gets as frustrated as I do sometimes with how things work within government, and you will be sorely missed. And your contributions, I don't know if everybody would recognize it, but I know personally how much time and energy and effort you've put into trying to help the country. So I thank you, and I think the country should thank you as well. On another note, I noticed that Mr. Hilbert Haar is not here. As I understand, he is also planning on moving on. His time here when he was working with the Today newspaper and with the St. Martin News, again, another person that will be missed. His journalistic integrity and qualities, I think, have brought a lot to the country and certainly to our press conferences. I'd like to sort of touch on a subject that we've talked about in the past, but just I've gotten a lot of questions about it and some comments and suggestions, and this is really regarding the reconstruction work permitting process. So just to lay out the normal process, in other words, let's say pre-IRMA, the normal process for applying for a work permit includes registering the vacancy, and then you had to place an ad in the newspaper and then wait for 5 weeks and see if there were any candidates that were locally available. And then at that point, you could submit your application for permission for a work permit, and that would then take about 6 weeks for processing. So altogether, that's technically 11 weeks, 12 weeks, so call it 3 months process. Post-IRMA, clearly the need for reconstruction workers has increased dramatically. There's been a number of efforts to train local people, also, of course, to ensure that there's been labor drives, recruitment drives of all different types to ensure that people who are interested in working in construction and reconstruction do have jobs. We've exhausted those efforts. We will continue with training efforts, and of course, if people who are interested in participating are still interested in working, of course, the ministry will facilitate finding jobs for anyone who's interested in working in construction. But that said, we also need to ensure that the reconstruction process happens as quickly as possible, and this is a topic we discussed previously, that based on Article 7 of the implementation decree, and based on the shortage of construction workers, we are looking at an expedited process for project-based requests. So in particular, what that means is that we would waive the requirement for the advertising and 5-week waiting period, so that will reduce or eliminate that 5-week period. And in addition, we will expedite the processing time. I mean, we're looking at being able to process requests within a week, 2 weeks. Again, all with the understanding that we need to expedite the availability of workers to expedite the reconstruction process. Some of the requirements are that the company needs to be in good standing, needs to be registered at the tax department, and they need to submit a housing plan. In other words, if you're going to bring in groups of construction workers for project-based work, you need to explain how you're going to find housing for them, because we certainly don't want through this process that we end up displacing people or driving up rental prices for our locals to find apartments. So we want to know how you're going to manage that process. And I want to be clear, some of the conditions are that, number one, of course, the employees who come need to pay their social premiums and their taxes, and that the permits are non-transferable. In other words, if you come in for a project, you're not going to be able to move from that company to another company, and it can be renewed once, and the maximum total duration would be a 3-year period. So we see this as a positive thing because it means that we're expediting the process to give permissions for people to come. We're ensuring that they're compliant with our regulations to ensure that the social premiums and taxes are being paid. And it also means that once that reconstruction phase is finished, that they will leave the island and therefore not end up staying and being competition for our local construction workers. And then post-IRMA, we also recognized that for those requesting regular work permits, in other words, not based on this Article 7, we are still waiving the advertising requirement, so cutting down that 5-week period or eliminating that 5-week period, but then we would go through a normal evaluation process, although expedited. So some of the criterias that are used for the evaluation process will all remain intact, and the important distinction is that this permit would be renewable, right? So just like a regular work permit.
People all across St. Martin are switching to a more rewarding experience. The WIB MasterCard Fun Miles credit card, better known as My Card. Earn 1 Fun Mile for every $2 spent, even abroad and online. This will quickly get you a ton of Fun Miles to redeem for travel, shopping, food, fuel, and much more. But there's more to My Card. Worldwide acceptance, an EMV chip for extra security, and 250 free Fun Miles with first use. Switch to My Card today at WIB.
Fun miles, fun within your reach.
Tell them, connecting you.
I've been around the Caribbean and other areas that have experienced hurricanes of lesser strength, and the recovery takes not months but years. And you are well on the way to almost full recovery in less than a year. So I want to once again say I was extremely and pleasantly surprised. The next thing I want to do before starting is to thank His Excellency the Governor for giving me this opportunity to address you today and what I consider a very important and vital element in terms of our development going forward and issues of climate change. Your Excellency, Governor Holiday, Prime Minister, other distinguished guests, members of the diplomatic corps if they are present, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen. My previous colleagues and speakers gave you a full background on the issues of climate change, its impacts presently and in the future. So what I plan to do is to put together all these presentations and see what we can do, what are the implications, and so on. By starting with the background. Professor Taylor mentioned of 3.5 millimeter. And it's very hard for people to understand what is 3.5 millimeter. But in 10 years, 3.5 millimeter is over 30 millimeters. And it is about 25 millimeters to an inch. So you can see in 10 years it's over an inch, the water of the sea will have risen. Another aspect, I listened and I decided to give 2 examples. He talked about 1 degree rise in temperature. What he didn't say, we are referring to degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And 1 degree Celsius is almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 1.8 to be exact. When we look at a person and we go to the hospital with a temperature, what they check is to see how high the temperature is above the normal, which is 98.4. When you get up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you see you have a serious fever. And if you get up to 101, it is life-threatening. So you see the populace of the earth. When we talk about 2 degrees rise in temperature, that is extremely significant. Because anything above 101 is life-threatening. And that is what we're talking about. Not to mention the environment as a whole. So these numbers might sound very small, but in reality they are not. So in my presentation, I will try to recap what has been said so that we will make sure that when you leave here today, if you didn't have a good understanding of climate change and what it means, you will be able to leave here with a much better understanding.
It's been said that behind every door, possibility awaits. How much possibility depends on which door you open first. Every day, we help our customers discover the possibilities in their lives. It all starts with a conversation. Scotiabank. Discover what's possible.
Hello, St. Martin. My name is Stephanie Medina and I play football with the Walichi Roma soccer team. I have represented St. Martin in many different games. For example, the Dutch Caribbean Women's Soccer Cup. I played against Bonaire, Aruba, and Curacao right here in this stadium. Sports matter to me because it makes me happy, it keeps me fit and healthy, and it is very fun. So I asked the business community to take on this challenge and will help us rebuild our facilities. And I also asked the community to nominate the local businesses in your area and take on the challenge and step up for sport. Why? Because sports matter. Check out the Department of Sport Facebook page for more information. Hashtag sports matter, hashtag are you in?
The name of the song, of course, is called Cage Bird, which is a very popular poem by Maya Angelou, and I was inspired to put it to music. And with that, we compiled it into this storytelling piece called The People Who Could Fly. And I hope you enjoy it, and just imagine yourselves as those people that could fly, and I hope you're inspired. Thank you so much. secretly.